At this point, you have explicated the prompt, meaning you've identified what the motifs, the contexts, and the theme are. You've developed a thesis statement that analyzes the author tone, style, and purpose. And you've also should, at this point, have created an outline, a rough outline, it doesn't have to be formal, of all of the evidence that you're going to use using the weaving organization strategy. The next step is going to be writing your introductory paragraph. For timed or shorter essays, there are specific strategies that we can use. The basic strategy is the inverted pyramid. For those of you, a brief review of that, that it's when you begin broad and get more specific until you end with your thesis statement. At this point, you've been introduced to several hook strategies, such as using rhetorical questions, an anecdote, a startling statement, or a quote. Those are really good strategies. They're very basic, and they do generate interest, but for our advanced strategies, we want to kind of transcend those. The first strategy I want to talk to you about is called a smattering. A smattering is simply when you take a series of adjectives and list them in order to introduce the topic about which you're going to be writing. If you look at the example that I have on the screen, innocent, tomboyish, sassy, precocious, these words define Scout, the speaker, in Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. Note, this is not the thesis, but it is the first line into the introduction of the introductory paragraph. So you can do that. It doesn't have to be about characters. It can be several adjectives about the motif. It can be several adjectives about the author. It can be several adjectives pulled from a passage or words pulled from a passage that help set up the theme of your paper. The next strategy I'm going to talk about is the parallel characters. I know that's the bottom strategy listed there, but I'm going to actually give you a very nice extended simile or metaphor example in a minute. But parallel characters are really good. It's a really good strategy to use when you are given a prompt that is specific to characterization analysis. This is when you actually take two characters from different texts and draw parallels to them. You are doing the juxtaposing. So to be clear, you're not taking two characters from the same novel. You're actually juxtaposing two characters from separate novels. A good example actually happened in the summer assignment when one of you drew a parallel between Pap and Huck Finn and I can't remember. Oh, Mr. Yule, yes. So that would be a good example, and that's something that could have been developed throughout the entire essay. The last strategy I'm going to talk about is the extended simile or metaphor. This is when you actually develop your own metaphor or simile and you draw a comparison throughout your entire essay. You establish it in your introductory paragraph, and then you would allude to it and tie back to it throughout the course of your essay. This is one of my favorite strategies because it really helps develop personal voice and to develop your organization strategies. So the example of the introduction that I'm going to show you is an extended metaphor. Okay? And this is based on the thesis that I developed as the example thesis. Authors often write to reveal the currents in the river of humanity, sometimes focusing on the trendy surface currents, sometimes on the dangerous undertows that threaten to tear society apart. Novelist Harper Lee chose to focus on one such undertow, the intolerance and racial prejudice rampant in the Jim Crow South. Through the eyes of a child in the novel To Kill a Mockingbird, Lee decries the ignorance of society damming the rivers of humanity in a small Alabama town, ultimately exalting the empathy and integrity often necessary to burst the levees of prejudice and hatred. If I go through that, I will see that I have several examples of the metaphor or several connections to the metaphor, like the currents in the river, the surface currents. We have undertows. Still using the same metaphor. All of this deals with water. And then we have the rivers of humanity. And then we have bursting the levees, which is specific to water as well. So you'll notice that This isn't something that is introduced in the first sentence and then that's it. This is something that you actually go through and develop. As though you're developing your own conceit. And the goal of this one would be to bring up or make further comparisons to water or rivers or levees or whatnot throughout the course of the essay. So your task, now that you have developed your own thesis statement based on the crucible, is to apply one of the strategies. It does not have to be this strategy, but one of the strategies that we just talked about, whether it be smattering, extended simile, metaphor, or parallel characters, and develop your own introductory paragraph.